Thank you and welcome to Grow and Engage Your Communities. I will begin presenting. So, as Valentina explained, I am Amber Cooper Jorez, and I'm joined by Rob Ellis. I won't give any further introductions because I think she did a great job. I will go straight into the presentation. So I'm going to just do a little introduction to why we are doing this and to sort of explain the purpose and the need for champions before I begin asking Rob some questions. So most of you here are also community management and development professionals. So you understand the importance of the need for champions. They represent our influencers, our supporters, our advocates, and our early adopters, particularly with online communities. They help to exemplify the shared values and identity of those in our community. They speak to the mission of the organization or the community in general. They provide the type of persona we envision as we build our communities and often hold a position of leadership or assist in recruiting others to the community. A perfect example of this would be, say, a private school where an alumni champion becomes a trustee and helps to shape the mission and the vision of the institution. Therefore, champions are ultimately directly connected to your community success as well as the evolution of your community. I like to share the engagement pyramid. Now, this is not new. This is not original. I'm sure many of you have seen this already, but there's a reason why it's been used by various institutions across industries, including higher education, civic and social institutions, and companies. For instance, say, for an employee engagement program. It's because it's an effective model for considering engagement strategy to cultivate your champions and to help move them into roles of leadership and participation. Of course, the mass always exists at the bottom. This is where you have the basic level of action for online communities. Of course, this would be simply having them join or activate a profile, whether you offer a private online community like Fulbrighter, for instance, where Rob manages his community, or if you encourage them to join, say, like a Facebook or a LinkedIn group. So if you want to create a long-term champion strategy, you really need to have a model in place to, one, outline what that cultivation journey looks like for those stakeholders that you want to move up the pyramid, and two, to measure whether this is being done and identify with whom. Are you actually targeting the right stakeholders? Are these the people who you want to build into your champions? I like to give an example of this with my own sort of champion that I've created, Leticia. Leticia's journey may be described as such. Leticia, has activated, my apologies. So Leticia has activated her account. She has decided to, through analytics, I can see that she's spending time on our blog pages and she's clicking on additional links. Maybe she's even shared an article she wrote for Medium. Then moving up the ladder, she's, after her initial adaption, she is now posting and she is now joining some of our affiliation groups. She's participating in events and even offered to be a mentor or a coach. And then she has actually been asked and accepted to be a community ambassador. So Leticia is just an example of somebody who you could consider as a persona in your model and your engagement pyramid. She's just it's just an example of a journey you might want to create as you consider how you would want to use a tool or a model like this, so that it aligns with your purpose. Now, you might decide to use something else, that a different type of model that fits better with your use case. But the critical point here is that you have some sort of strategy or system of measurement for your champions to grow. So incentivizing your champions. This is ultimately directly connected. You do this through some sort of system of rewards. There's a reason why gamification is so popular. We all respond well to systems of rewards. You see that in LinkedIn, for instance. Nir Eyal actually speaks to this when he talks about his hook model. It's literally built into our psyche. It's why social media is so powerful and such an influencer through its triggers. So if you want your champions to honor you by acting as advocates and supporters, you need to do the same for them. You really need to reinforce those aspects of their identity that connect them to your mission. I've listed some suggestions here. Such as providing them opportunities for ownership in supporting your community vision. So an example I might give is a personal example. I'm actually a member of the American University of Paris's President's Alumni Advisory Council. That's quite a mouthful. But this role gives me exclusive access to the president and a position of leadership that allows me to fit within the university's strategic plan, but also reinforces my own identity as a community advocate, as an alumni leader, as a global explorer, as the university motto goes. It actually honors my personal contributions to the university and gives me a voice as a champion by directly taking into account my suggestions and feedback on alumni matters, which mean a lot to me, directly to the president and the university board. So when thinking about how you incentivize your champions, you really need to connect by matching your mission to their ambition. And considering how you incentivize your champions is really, really personal. I mean, think about the example that I just gave. So you need to consider opportunities that best connect to their identity and allow that relationship to flourish. I'm a big fan of the podcast Masters of Scale, and Reid Hoffman discusses at length how anybody can be a hero, but it's relatable. And this is relatable to all institutions because we all need our heroes. So with that said, with having heroes, we also need to give them some sort of structure in which they can work and flourish. So of course you want to give them a creative space to grow, but they need to understand what your expectations are of them, as well as they need to know what they can expect from you. So they can feel a foundation and trust in the relationship that you have. If they don't have this structure, they may very well flounder and in the end lose interest. So I also say here, relationships take time to build. Now, I think, again, there's been tons of sessions during this summit about relationships and creating strong relationships, particularly with those you want to build up, with our communities in general. So we understand that relationships take time. So when you're thinking about your Champions program, for those new communities, keep in mind that if you don't already have that core base of champions, that will take time to build that trust and foundation. So one way of doing that is to never compromise on your mission or your values. Particularly, say, if you just want to attract, I don't know, a particular individual of influence or means, ultimately it will never work. Stay true to your mission and to your vision, because your greatest champions will ultimately support you in that. Katarina Fake from Flickr has talked about this in past interviews, actually, and how they at Flickr stay true to their vision, and look at how they've evolved and how they are doing today. So I'm showing this tools and techniques for success. I'm just staying on here momentarily. It's more of a visual. I wanted to take this opportunity to now have Rob join. So Rob, and considering what I just sort of presented, would you mind just speaking a bit about your own community, how you give your champions ownership while also making them accountable? At Fulbrighter, do you have a particular framework or structure that you work within?
Wonderful. Thank you, Amber, for that introduction. And thank you, Amber and Hivebrite, for inviting me along to talk today. Before I get to that crucial question about accountability and ownership, I want to quickly sketch in the Fulbrighter platform, just for those of you not familiar with it. Some of you may know the Fulbright Cultural Exchange Program. It's been running for just over 70 years, and each year it sees Americans going abroad to countries around the world, and then countries around the world sending people to America. These could be scholars, students, professionals in a range of fields. And it's designed to build bridges between communities. The Fulbrighter platform launched last year and is a space to bring together alumni and grantees of the Fulbright program globally to allow them to connect, network, engage, and collaborate with each other. So we've been live for about a year now, and we've got 20,000 members across 165 different countries, and we're becoming quite a vibrant community. And a lot of that is thanks to some of the community champions we've got working in the platform. So I think to turn to that question around ownership and accountability, I think one really useful way to think about your championship is as a program, as having some sort of structure. So what we do within Fulbrighter is our mission statement very clearly emphasizes developing engaging content and allowing for rich and exciting, meaningful connections and collaborations. So it's that balance between content and connections. And that mission statement filters through into the way we structure our championship program. So we have specific roles that champions can take on with our community. We have a role of community manager. So someone can take over an aspect of the platform. So we're a global community with 20,000 members, but there's lots of sub-communities within that broader community. Communities based on location, academic field, professional discipline, or just general interests. People can take over and manage those sub-communities and sub-disciplines, and that allows for those connections to be formed. But then we also have people geared towards content. So we have commissioning editors, people who look for Fulbrighters to contribute and engaging content to the platform, and contributing editors, people who will provide that content to users. So that's that balance between connections and community and content. So I think to turn to that question of ownership and accountability, I think there's two aspects of this. One is around philosophy and one is around practical tips. I think it is important to think philosophically around what your platform is for and what it does. You need to have a meaningful, user-focused mission and vision. And that mission and vision should really be co-designed by your community. And I think the greatest weaknesses I see in communities, particularly with the higher education and alumni sector, is people build communities because everyone else has one, so they think we should have one too, or because they want to mobilize their community to give back, and there's no sense about how you enrich and engage those users. So philosophically, making sure your champions understand and value the mission of your platform is key, because that's where accountability should come in. I don't want my champions to be accountable to me. I don't want them necessarily to care what I think about their work. I'm just a random person within their community. I want them to be accountable to the mission of the platform. Are they meeting that user-focused, user-engaged mission? So that's kind of that philosophical aspect. Have you got a mission that emphasizes those shared values? But I think there's also some practical steps you can take. Firstly, when you've got your champions in place, make sure they can operate independently from you. And that's a technical question as much as anything. So we use the Hivebrite platform, and within that platform, we provide for our champions a special place where we produce some videos and some other tips to show them how they can best use the community and utilize the functionality in their community. That means they're not dependent on me always for advice. They can be independent and take ownership of what they do. But equally, it's not just technical, it's making sure they understand the value of the community and can really pick it up and run with it. I think the final aspect of this question about ownership and accountability is providing what I've termed somewhat oxymoronically flexible structure. So I think Amber talked earlier about every hero needs a structure, and it's really important that you give your champions a structure. And a structure is your mission statement and your vision. That is a structure of expected behavior. But also provide more detailed advice and structure for what they can do. This means time commitment. This means suggesting types of content they could post. This means pointing them at unanswered questions in the platform, flagging up interesting threads. And I think there's a careful balance to be struck here between allowing them the flexibility to determining what they want to respond to and how they want to respond, but also nudging those who need a bit more guidance into that platform. So striking that balance between making sure they have ownership and independence, but you are there as kind of like a guiding figure, pointing them in the right direction.
Well, thank you, Rob. So Rob didn't mention this, but he manages 100 plus champions. So he has quite a task at hand, particularly in giving them ownership. How do you ensure that a champion's personal path aligns with the community's overall mission?
Thanks, Amber. So I think that's a really crucial question. Each individual's path and your community's mission should be closely linked. And that goes back to that philosophical point. If the interests of your champions are in some respects diverging from your community, then you're not going to have a successful champion program. Equally, if you're only harnessing your champions for the benefits they bring you, you're not going to have a successful champion program because they won't feel a sense of belonging with your community. So to give you an example, within the Fulbrighter community, we have a very diverse community. We have early career professionals and academics. So these can be people in their early to mid 20s who are just getting started in their academic field or their career disciplines. And they really want to be raising their profile, getting their name out there and staking a claim for their own community expertise. Then we have our retired professionals, people who are 70, 80-year-olds who have spent the time investing in their profession, investing in their academic discipline. Now they're happy to take a step back, but want to stay involved. They want to stay giving back. And then we have our kind of like medium curious professionals and researchers who want to know what's going on out there and share content in a safe space. And the point is you have to adapt your championship program to meet the needs of your diverse audiences. My background's in higher education, so I used to work with a lot of 18 to 21-year-olds, and that was brilliant because they'd walk over hot coals for a $10 Amazon voucher, and you'd get all the content you wanted, and that would be simple. A 80-year-old retired biomechanical engineer isn't going to be so motivated by a $10 Amazon voucher. So you have to work more on what is it that makes his mind work, what are his needs. And we've tailored those role descriptions to the needs of our community. So I talked earlier about we have defined roles within the platform: community manager, commissioning editor, content editor. These are terms that are not specific to Fulbright. They're not specific to digital communities. They are transferable terms, transferable roles that people can use in other contexts. So for example, those early career academics, early career professionals can put those in their CV, can mobilize that reputation elsewhere. So I think as long as you're adapting your program to those needs, you're going to be successful.
Thank you. That's I feel like that's really, in terms of talking about identity and ensuring that they're linked, I think that's so important. So how do you actually measure your group champions' contribution to the overall community? Sort of any best practices that you could share with us?
So I'm going to slightly flip this question, Amber, to go back to what I've been talking about earlier. In some ways, you could be thinking about more as, how do you enable your group champions to measure their contribution to the community? Because if you set up your championship program right, they will be as invested in the success of the community as you are. And I think there's a bit of a problem here. To enable this sort of robust measurement of a community, we need robust, meaningful metrics adapted to a community's purpose. Unfortunately, one of the most visible metrics to your users and your champions is the accursed thumbs up like button. So we publish content about mediating peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia, about dislocations caused by COVID-19, about the experience of Black first-generation students in US higher education. The response to those contents is not a thumbs up. That is not the type of meaningful connection and collaboration we want. This does nothing for our community, but it's the most visible sign of engagement. So it's the things that our champions in particular, they don't have access to all the data in the back office. All they see is that accursed thumb hovering over the bottom. And if 50 people like a post on Facebook and only 5 like it in my platform, they feel their content isn't being successful. So what do we have to do? We have to understand what metrics work in our platform. I think one of the frustrations I have is when I read content in our platform, I can feel my brain getting bigger from soaking up all the really exciting conversation. And that's what I want to measure. Now, I'm not a scientist. I don't think my brain is actually physically expanding. So I don't think we can measure that dimension. But what proxies do we have that will allow us to measure that expansion that's going on? Expansion in terms of content and connections and richness. And I think partly that's about finding proxy analytics to do that for you. There's lots of sessions of analytics during this conference. I'm not going to wade into them, but making sure you go beyond Google Analytics into Google Tag Manager and some of the more sophisticated analytics tracking you can do allows you to move away from that likes concept into more rich metrics. But I think also crucial there is make those metrics visible. Reward your champions by showing them some of that back office numbers. It shouldn't just be something locked away in your personal Google Analytics account, which tends to be what happens with data that only gets extracted once a year when you're trying to report to your senior management team. Make them visible, reward your champions by showing them that, because that will show them and you their contribution.
So I just want to ask you, this has all been really good. I'm so grateful for you for sharing these insights. I just have one last question that I want to ask because I see that we are coming up on time. And that's, how does technology help you power your community program? What technology do you use to scale your program? And what technology do your champions require to ensure success?
So I think that's a really, really good question. But it's interesting. Technology has changed dramatically, even just in the last 7 months. So it's 10:30 here in the UK. It's past my bedtime. I'm tired and sleepy. And I love you all and I'm delighted to be here. But it's unusual for us to now be working from 8 a.m. in the morning through to 10:30 p.m. at night. And there's a mental health aspect here about how we sever off that community. There's also something really powerful about being able to be open to a global community. So I have users and champions all around the world in upwards of 160 countries. I'm now closer to them than I've ever been before. They can drop into a Skype chat, a Google Hangout, a Zoom call, and just ask me a couple of minor questions about the platform, about whether this piece of content would be suitable, about an idea they have for a community, but not sure how it would work. And these interpersonal conversations with your champions are crucial because we talk a lot about community. I don't think any of us manage a community. We're all managing tens, hundreds of communities within that overarching community, and your champions are a community. You need to manage them as a separate entity through making yourself available. But there's other ways. If you value, sleep and a social life, you might not want to be on Skype 24/7. So there's other things you can do. One thing we have, one of the advantages of Hivebrite is we can create sub-communities. So we have a sub-community specifically for our champions. That's where I can post out announcements to them. I can share things like a content calendar, which is crucial, and content guidelines. But crucially, they can also exchange ideas with each other. They can think about what works and what doesn't, and they can build a community of practice within the platform, which takes me out of the interfering role. And I think the only other thing to say is we now have such rich platforms that we can really customize permissions, admin access, to really make sure our users have the technology with them that empowers them to do what you need them to do without necessarily opening up your entire platform and personal data in the back office to them. So our champions have very strict permissions that allow them to do certain tasks that keep the integrity of our community safe.
Thank you, Rob. That was great. It's given me something to think about. I'm just going to share my screen one more time, just to say thank you to everybody. And if you have any questions of Rob or I, and you can feel free to reach out to us at hello@hivebrite.com. Otherwise, we will be around the summit, so feel free to send us a direct message. Thank you, everybody.
Can I go to sleep now?
Yes, so will I. Thank you.